Should you use presets and samples, or should you create your own sounds? And if you use samples, how do you know which ones are the best ones to pick? Hi guys, this is Artifact, back with another episode of the Producer Mindset. This time I thought I'd take you on a little walk. I slept very little last night. I was actually up until about 4 AM producing a new track because I have the new version of Logic and a new iMac and things are running so smoothly. I was just having so much fun and I didn't want to stop. But anyway, I forced myself to get up at 8 this morning, so I slept like 4 hours to make this video for you guys before I start work. So the first question came from my good friend Marcel, who I'm not sure about you having the same name as me, man. It's not cool. Anyway, Marcel asked, is it best to create your own sounds or to use sounds from, for example, a sample pack or preset folder? I think most of us know the answer already. It's a bit of both, right? But the main thing that I really want to draw attention to is the sort of guilt associated with using samples from packs and loops. You know, there's been a lot of shaming in the past. I don't think it's that apparent anymore, but there used to be a lot of shaming on, oh, you have to create all the sounds yourself and all this. Firstly, it's a sampled art form, drum and bass especially. I mean, the whole genre is built on stealing samples from other music, and it's about how you put it together in your own way. But aside from that, I will seriously challenge anyone to use only samples and loops and sample packs and create something really unique and original just by using that, because it is literally impossible. Even if you find the best drum loops and the best bass loops and the best riffs and you throw them all together to make a song, it's never going to be a great song, because there's so much more that goes into actually composing and producing a track that just by using sounds from a folder, that's never going to be enough to actually make a decent song. There's so much more technical things to take into consideration, and just the way that you sort of arrange things yourself is always going to be a lot more interesting than the way that the sample is already arranged in the pack. So with that being said, absolutely feel free to use any samples or presets as much as you can and manipulate them in your own way. Another thing to take into consideration when you're building your own sounds from scratch is yes, as someone mentioned in the group already, you have a lot more freedom in terms of sculpting the actual sound. But you can do this with the sample as well. If you just have a drum hit sample, you can really sculpt it a lot these days and manipulate the audio without it being in a synth. Just a decent sampler and some decent plugins. You can turn a kick drum into a hi-hat or a snare into a rabbit or a cat. No, but you know what I mean. You can really easily manipulate audio. So I would literally just focus on, making a wicked track. Specifically think about the way that the ingredients work with each other. But it's not so important as to where the ingredients come from. You can get them from the market or you can grow them yourself. It's fine. So anyway, the second question came from my friend Scott, who said, how do you choose the best samples to use? Right off the top, this is the thing that comes down to taste, which is also developed over time. So for example, if we just take the really basic, choosing a kick drum sample, when I first started making music, all kick drums sounded, the same to me, and I didn't know which one to use or where to start. And it's only been through developing my ears over time that I've heard not only what kick drum sample, for example, I think is good quality, but also which one I like the sound of specifically and would like to use in a track. It's a case of just developing a relationship between each particular sound. For example, a hi-hat, when you start out, it's going to be really difficult to discern what is a good hi-hat or a bad hi-hat, and after years of producing you just kind of get the feel for what would sound nice and what wouldn't. Some people naturally just know what sounds good, but it took me a long time to figure out which sounds sounded good or not, and again, it is subjective at the end of the day. Nevertheless, when I am choosing a sample, I'm going to stick with the example of just drum hits for this video. I've categorized into three main things that I think about when I'm selecting the sample. And the first one is the frequency on the spectrum in terms of the analyzer. Where is the fundamental hitting? Is that in key with my track? Is it in a good place that I could mix it in with the other elements of my track? And is there a lot of sort of high-end information or not? Do I want that to be there? Do I want it nice and crispy, or do I want to layer something on top? So that's one thing to consider. The second thing I would always think about is the stereo information. Is this sound completely in mono? Am I going to have to add my own sort of stereo character to give it some width? Or is this sound so stereo that the mono has no power and it's better just to use a sample that's mono or that has a lot more low-end power in the mono, which is going to cause less mix-down issues later down the line? And the third thing I'd take into consideration is the actual sound quality. Not only does it sound cool and interesting to my ears, but are there sort of little hisses or clicks or pops or unwanted artifacts that are going to be detrimental to the overall sound quality of the track? And this is why often when I'm picking out specific drum hits or samples, I will use a good pair of headphones. I recommend a decent pair of open back headphones for this, because if you're trying to find these little artifacts on a pair of speakers, you won't often hear the little tiny details that are going on, especially on a big pair of KRKs or whatever. That's what I use. I wouldn't be able to hear necessarily the little faults unless I'm using my headphones. So I think, I mean, you can use both. If you're analysing a kick drum, for example, you wanna see how powerful it comes through on a system, you can do that as well. But you should also check on headphones to make sure there's no, as I said, unwanted artifacts or noises or clicks or pops. So yeah, those are my kind of 3 main tips for choosing the right sample. In conclusion, don't worry if you're choosing a sample from a pack or if you're creating your own. Producing a great track takes so much work anyway that it's going to be enough of a challenge in itself, so you don't have to make all the sounds yourself. And also finding the right sound can often be a challenge. So whatever you do, just make some great music. If you guys like the video, make sure you follow the Producer Mindset Facebook group, and if you want to support me on Patreon, the link is also below. I'll be doing a live stream production tutorial this week on there. It's only for Patreon members. I've been producing for a long time, so I don't really want to give all of my production knowledge away for free to everyone, so that's why I appreciate like a small donation if you want to sort of learn more. But anyway, apart from that, have a great week, and see you next week.